Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on the Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chiskovsky here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. This week we've got a bit more of a lighter week compared to the last couple. I think that's a little fair considering how heavy the last few have been. But we are talking about more NBA this week, so that's definitely something to be excited for considering how little we've talked about it in the past. We'll be starting off with the NFC and AFC championship games. I know Caleb has a lot to say on that NFC one, as watching the 49ers go to the Super Bowl was not a fun experience for him specifically. Then we'll move on to Luka Doncic scoring 73 points and the most points scored in a game since Kobe's 81 game, which is the most bonkers thing ever. We'll get into that. Then we'll talk about Adrian Griffin being out with the Milwaukee Bucks, which is also pretty crazy considering he was second in the East and still technically is, and how he's getting replaced by Doc Rivers and what the general response has been, what potential reasons there could be around it. We'll get into all of that and more. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, Fresh Take Network, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, as we have new content coming out every single week on each and every one of those platforms. Caleb, are you ready to get into it?
Absolutely.
No wacky stat this week. We're jumping right into it. This is serious
Goddamn.
business. Yeah.
The wacky stat is that the Lions were up by 17.
So, to start off this week, we'll be going into the championship games in the NFL, which just happened a little under, I want to say 20 minutes ago is when the NFC championship. So, while it's still fresh in both of our minds, we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to throw it straight to you, Caleb. I know you have a lot to say on this one. As the 49ers were able to beat the Lions coming back from 17, I believe. It was a ridiculous game to watch live. I'm just going to let you take this one.
I'm so pissed. I'm so pissed. I don't even know. I mean, we can get into all the other stuff in the game, like what happened the rest of the game later on. The third quarter in particular was rough because that's when they blew their 17-point lead. But I'm just gonna immediately hit on some of the decisions made in the fourth quarter by Dan Campbell and the Lions. Now, I mean, it's tough because it's very much you live by the sword, you die by the sword kind of thing. Dan Campbell has been known for going for it on fourth downs in situations like this. That is his entire thing. But there's a certain point where you go too far and you just end up looking like a complete dumbass. In that situation, when the Niners just score to go up 3 and you are in easy field goal range, 4th and 3, I don't care at that point. Take the points because you don't know what's going to happen. Just take the goddamn points. And I am all for aggression. I am all for this. But I honestly think Dan Campbell, I think he's a great coach, but I honestly kind of think he's gotten the benefit of having a great offensive coordinator who calls some fantastic plays on these fourth and shorts that get him those conversions. Because I was thinking about this during the end of the game. You've got a guy like Brandon Staley who did the same thing that Dan Campbell did with the Chargers, where he would go for it on fourth down more than any other coach. And he got ridiculed for it because with him, it never worked out. They never got any of those. And he was fired, I mean, for multiple reasons, but that was a huge one. That was a big reason why people hated Brandon Staley. And I'm not saying Dan Campbell's the same thing, but it's almost like it's just a thing about perception, where it's like one of the memes where it's like, it's like, oh, I go on fourth down, but I do it because of grit. Oh, yeah, that's great. Oh, I go for fourth down and I do it because of analytics. Ew, no, you should be fired. Like,
yeah, pretty much.
I think we need to start having that conversation about Dan Campbell, and I think Dan Campbell needs to just start playing a little bit more situationally, because that lost them the game. And then, I mean, I didn't fully lose them the game, because then the other stupid-ass decision I'm mad about, this one is even worse, because at least with the fourth down call, you can kind of say, well, if they got it, then you go up a touchdown, and the Lions probably would have won. Sure. This other call, when it's 3rd and goal, you have all 3 of your timeouts, and there's a little bit over a minute left. Why on God's green earth would you run the ball? Why?
Yeah.
If you drop back and throw a pass and it's incomplete, boo-hoo, fine. You're going to go for it on fourth down anyways, which they did, and they got it. You would have saved
True.
um you would have saved that timeout because when you kick it back to the Niners, you're going to need all three of those timeouts to stop them from running the ball. And it's like if you have all three of those timeouts, you have a chance. That's your only chance. Onside kicks in the NFL do not work anymore. They are a dead play. Ever since the NFL has put in all the bullshit player safety stuff around, I mean that's not bullshit. I'm just pissed. But like ever since they put in all that stuff around onside kicks, you cannot convert onside kicks anymore. What happened in the NFC Championship game, Seattle versus Green Bay, where Seattle got an onside kick, that will never happen again. That will never happen again. Because in those moments where teams know that you're going to do an onside kick, they are like the other. It's the Niners. Any team is good enough to be in the championship game. They're going to be prepared for that shit.
I think the worst part about that as well was how close they had it. I think afterwards they ended up saying that he would, even if I don't remember what Lions player it was, but there was a Lions player who dived forward and like just jumped right out of his hands, and you could just watch it. I felt like I was watching a car crash, but like, and then they
would have been penalty anyways because they have to go 10 yards.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's what I was about to say. Immediately, the party poopers in the broadcast booth that night that night decided to let us all know that it wouldn't have mattered. But God, I can't like it's crazy to think that if it was 10 yards, they would have been that close. And that's the tough thing with those onside kicks, right? Where it's just you're really weighing like you're putting your entire season on like a 5% chance or whatever it is. I know it's low.
It's not even.
Is it
it's not even? It's lower than 5% chance. I think the broadcast said it was 4 because it's like you're not going to get that. I think it's the stupidest rule in football. I think it makes football games less exciting because the only way that football games are exciting in the end, and when it gets this way, it is very exciting, is when the team that's down gets the ball with a chance to win. That is what makes football exciting. And that almost never happens in today's NFL because it always comes down to either an onside kick or you kick it back to the other team, and then you have 3 timeouts and you have to stop them 3 times and then get the ball back right away so you don't lose any time. Both of those are incredibly anticlimactic ways to end the game if the winning team either recovers the onside kick or gets a first down. It's stupid. Onside kick rule is stupid, but not as stupid as what the Lions did running it on 3rd and goal. That was absolutely inexcusable. And frankly, as a Seahawks fan who's looking at both of these games today and saying Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, probably the top 2 candidates you'd want as head coach, just absolutely atrocious play calling in the end, more so for Ben Johnson, where I'm just looking at them and I'm like, I don't know anymore because that is inexcusable. I don't care how good of a game you called all day. If you run the ball on 3rd and goal, you are a terrible coordinator because that's when it matters.
And what I was even thinking while watching is I feel like this guy plays or calls plays the same way I do in Madden, where it's like these games take 5 minutes to take or play. It's 4th and 10. I'll go for it. And, I mean, it's all fun and games in there, but this is the NFC Championship, right? And like you mentioned, it's just, in situations like this, sometimes you just have to, no matter what you're known for, or whatever Dan Campbell's known for, sometimes you got to take those points. Because, especially today, I don't know, you know what I'm going to try and do? I'm going to see if I can find a 4th down stats, because I'm curious. I know they went for it at least 3 or 4 times. I want to know exactly how many of those they got.
I think they got at least one of them. I know.
But that's what I mean. You're going 1 for 4 then, right?
I don't think they went 1 for 4. I don't know how many they got because the thing is, when you get them, then there's no conversation. And I think that would be coaches like Dan Campbell's point, is that when you go for them and you get it, there's no conversation and there's no backlash. It's when you don't get it. But I just think in this situation, you have to weigh out the pros and cons of it. Because if Detroit kicks that field goal, they're still in it, and they go down and tie it with a touchdown. It's as simple as that. I don't know. I'm less mad about that than I am the running it on 3rd and goal. But I mean, they never should have been in that situation to start with. They had the 17.
They ended up going 1 for 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. That checks out.
Yeah.
Both of those decisions were questionable.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, right? Like, it's just, I'm not against going for it on 4th down. I actually think it's rather smart, especially when you are have the type of offense that the Lions have had all year, where you can trust Jared Goff in that spot to throw it. You have a couple good running backs on the roster you're not afraid to give the ball to in those short spots. But I mean, like you mentioned, their play calling just was questionable. It wasn't exactly the smartest plays. There was an RPO on third down towards the end of the game that I thought was rather dumb, because I don't remember exactly who they threw it to on that one, but it was, I remember watching it and just going like, it's the same issue I've had with a lot of offenses where they throw the ball but way behind the line of scrimmage and then just expect their wide receiver to run through three linebackers.
Yeah.
And it's never made sense to me.
And I think that goes in line. Something that Greg Olson was talking about on the broadcast was that that's very intentional, because they're doing that on third down and saying, we're going to pick up this on fourth down, which is such a big stretch. It's such a big stretch. And I mean, it works sometimes, and it worked for them. It worked for them late in the first half, where you have a 3rd and 12 and you run the ball because you want to say, I'm going to go for it on fourth down, and they just pick it up anyways. It worked for them on third and 18. Where they did a similar kind of thing where they just chucked it up the middle and he was able to run for it and get it. And yeah, so it's a more nuanced conversation, because again, you don't go after the times when they miss it. But I think in a situation like that, where like I almost wonder if Dan Campbell is still playing like he's coaching the 3-13 Detroit Lions, where he's like, we need to take every single chance possible because we don't have as much talent as they do. Because that's what he did when the Lions were worse. Is like, there was a game, I was talking with my buddy Kian about this, the game he had against the Rams a few years ago, I believe, where he fake punted it like 3 times and ended up making it a game, because the Lions at that point had a lot less talent than the Rams did. And it's like, yeah, if you're gonna win, go for it, but they don't need to do that anymore. Yeah, I'm advocating for something in the middle, because I think going for it on fourth down, great. I think even that second one, I'm like, sure, whatever, 4th and 2, sure, you miss up on a field goal, but at least that's like in the third quarter. Going for it when you're down 3, like 6 minutes left in the fourth, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and even just like comparing it to what the 49ers were doing, who obviously they're just play style, they're not going to go for it as much as the Lions necessarily would. They only went for it on fourth down once. Third down were actually surprisingly identical. I felt like the 49ers did a really good job on third downs getting down the field, but I mean, other than I guess towards the end of the game when the Lions were just frankly fucking everything up, I don't know. When I look at it now on paper, it feels like it doesn't tell the whole story, because I think the Lions started off really strong and we saw that. I think a lot of what, like, these risks that they were taking on third and fourth. Yeah, I was going to say that as well. I also wanted to just move that over to how confident you are in the Niners after this game, because truthfully, I don't know really necessarily. Scared. Are you? Yeah.
I'm scared that they're going to win. I not to jump ahead too much, but I hate this Super Bowl matchup. This is, as a Seahawks fan, like, this is just the worst.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me a lot of and I mean, Patrick Mahomes is in it, so maybe that's why, but Patrick Mahomes Bucs Super Bowl, where Patrick Mahomes got bullied the entire time because his O-line couldn't do shit, and he couldn't find anyone downfield, and he just kept running out of time in the pocket. And he couldn't, and it ended up getting like the coolest incompletion I've ever seen in my life. You know, the diving one that everybody loves to use the photo of. Like, I feel like there's a very high chance that this Super Bowl could end up being similar. And that's not me trying to discredit the offensive line of the Chiefs. I just think they're less talented. I think they're here because of Mahomes, and I don't think that's a controversial opinion at all.
Well, At this point, I don't have any reason to doubt the Chiefs, because I mean, there were plenty of reasons to doubt them in all of this year before this, but they've proven me wrong time and time again. They've proven everybody wrong time and time again in the playoffs, and I hope they can continue to do that against the Niners. But I don't know. In terms of Super Bowl matchup that this reminds me of, this, at least as a Seahawks fan, this is a very personal example, but this reminds me of the matchup. I think it was like 1 or 2 Super Bowls before that, when it's Patriots Rams, and I'm like, you want me to pick a team? I'd rather pick putting a gun to my head and pulling the trigger. So, because it's like you either choose the team that's been so successful again and again and again,
Yeah.
or you choose the team that I would rather like drink a pound of vomit than see win a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
So
I
I don't
think
know.
at this point I'm definitely firmly on the Chiefs side, and I'd be shocked if you weren't on
I
it
am
too.
too.
But
I am too. Yeah,
I think at this point it's kind
I
of
don't.
because
I never wanted them to win. But
I think I appreciate the story of the Chiefs this year, where seriously everybody was doubting them, including us. I was definitely bringing it up on the podcast, the fact that I felt like Patrick Mahomes was having a terrible season. I think that it should. I remember saying that it should be something that should be talked about more, about the fact that he's just basically been a bit not abysmal, but not the Patrick Mahomes of old. And then he just went, "Fuck you! I'm going to turn on the Jets in the playoffs," and here we are, right? Like I think it's just crazy that this is the type of player that he is, with the talent around him. I don't know. It's that Ravens Chiefs game going into it felt like it shouldn't. It felt like it was a foregone conclusion almost with how people were talking about it. Like the Ravens were going to win the entire thing. It wasn't going to be close. This was Lamar's year. And then all of a sudden, it just didn't happen. I kept waiting for the Ravens to come back. I kept waiting for it. It just didn't happen. And
yeah, and well, I mean, they did come back. That's the frustrating thing.
Yeah, no, but
they
you get what I
had
mean.
a comeback.
Yeah, but they didn't finish the job. I kept waiting. Like that pick at the end just felt like a punch in the gut at the end of all of it.
Yeah, it's the pick at the end, but I think even the bigger one was the Zay Flowers combination of the taunting penalty, which is stupid as all hell, that backed them up, and then the punch out at the goal line, like Cam Chancellor style.
Yeah, that was wild.
Because they went on basically 2 scoring drives. They got the ball into the end zone both times. It just ended up in the hands of the wrong team.
That was wild.
Because the Chiefs offense did completely stall in the second half. They didn't score. Yeah. Like I think that's kind of an underrated storyline is that the Chiefs offense didn't do very well. It's just that the Ravens offense kept shooting themselves in the foot. And I see blame going around on Lamar, but I'm like this wasn't really his fault. The interception was terrible. Yeah. And that was a play that was squarely on him.
That was a dumb interception. But like I thought
Isaiah Likely also shouldn't be going like this. If he isn't open.
That's true as well. It was a weird game to watch because like I said, it just felt like the entire time I was just waiting for it, right? I was waiting to see this Ravens team that everybody had talked about, that we'd all seen all year long, and they just didn't show up. And I don't know what combination. I don't know if that actually makes you. I don't know if the Chiefs winning that game actually makes me that much higher on the Chiefs, as much as I feel like it's a mix of them getting lucky, or it's like a mix of something or other. It feels weird that they're here after the season they've had, but at this point, what else are you going to expect from Patrick Mahomes, right? Like it's just what he does. And people are already crowning him. I've been following it like on Twitter, and people are already saying this is the most impressive stretch of football they've ever seen from a quarterback. And that's something I also wanted to bring up to you and get your opinion on, because there's a lot of people saying that, and it's a very interesting conversation to have, where it's like, if he keeps this up, how much does he have to do to really get in the argument for one of the most, if not the most talented quarterback we've ever seen?
Oh, well, he already is the most talented quarterback we've ever seen. That's never in doubt. But this whole thing of just like, oh my God, oh wow, this is the greatest stretch of play we've ever seen from a quarterback. He's not playing that different. It's not. It's not that. I'd push back on something you said a little bit. I'd push back on something you said a little bit earlier, where you're like, Mahomes was bad. Mahomes was abysmal. Whatever.
I didn't say. I said abysmal, and I instantly retracted that. I wanted to. Because that wasn't the word I was trying to use. But
even saying he wasn't playing up to his normal level, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't. I don't know. Like
that wasn't what I was trying to say.
Chiefs game.
Yeah,
watching any Chiefs game, it's like Marquez Valdez-Scantling against the Eagles, drops the ball. You watch Kadarius Toney, week 1 against the Lions. If Mahomes' receivers, Kadarius Toney lining up side against the Bills, Mahomes made those plays, and he's been playing the same level. It's just that he had such an this is where I use the word abysmal supporting cast around him, that it's like you could put, I don't know, Tom Brady combined with Mahomes, combined with peak Aaron Rodgers, combined with Joe Montana back there. And if you can hit the guys in the chest as many times as you can, and if they drop the ball, there's nothing you can do as a quarterback back there. I don't care. So this run is from Mahomes doesn't like it doesn't surprise me on a Mahomes level. So if people are like, oh wow, Mahomes, like this is such a surprise for Mahomes, it's not Mahomes. It's just like so surprising that all of the Chiefs receivers and all of the talent around them got their stuff together. Even Travis Kelce, that first touchdown against the Ravens, when he's being covered by Kyle Hamilton, one of the best young safeties in the league, makes this incredible catch falling backwards. Travis Kelce was not doing that the rest of the season. He was jumping up and had it square in his hands, and he dropped the fucking ball. This isn't the same Chiefs offense, and I don't like Mahomes has played basically the exact same the entire season. It's just that somehow, I don't know what drugs Andy Reid gave them in like the Week 18 game where they saddled their starters. Maybe the cold in Kansas City when they played against the Dolphins, just to like, I don't know, reworked them or whatever. But like it's the Chiefs supporting cast that is the story here, and it's not getting talked about nearly enough. And you can give credit to Mahomes all you want. He's playing well, but he's played well this whole season. He hasn't played bad. It's just that he hasn't had the cast around him. And now for some reason, this cast is finally stepping up, and we see that, oh wow, he actually is playing good. Especially that last play of the game against the Ravens. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, pretty much the exact same play he had against the Eagles, but he catches it this time. That's the difference. That's why this Chiefs team is good. But I don't know how sustainable it is, and that scares me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's kind of what I meant by that, where it's like I don't know really how much that win made me more or less. It definitely didn't make me less confident in them, but it didn't really make me feel any better, I don't think. It was just just kind of happened, and now we're just living in it, right? Like, and it's the outcome nobody expected, and now we potentially could see another Super Bowl where not to like shout out where my opinion on it is, but it could be another Super Bowl where we could potentially see Patrick Mahomes lose pretty badly again. And it would be a second Super Bowl where it just wasn't close for him. And I wonder, after all the conversations that have been just going around after this game, like I wonder, like I just like looked up Patrick Mahomes' name on Twitter, and I'm seeing like comparisons to Tom Brady, comparisons to like a whole like multitude of different things, and it's just it is a wild thing to just live through right now.
Yeah. I almost wonder what the general public, because we're still in the immediate aftermath. I haven't really looked too much to see what the conversation is around this matchup, because honestly, I've just been in a rage about the Lions losing for the last 30 minutes. But I haven't seen the general conversation around what this game's going to be yet, and I'd honestly be curious. I almost would want the Niners to be favored, because it does seem that there's something about this Chiefs team, and Mahomes especially, that being underdogs for the first time ever has kind of lit a fire under them, and I almost wonder if that's the difference. Because I mean, I know Mahomes, like playing on Mahomes hasn't played on the road. Mahomes hasn't played on the road. Like I know that gets under his skin, and that was a motivator for him. So I almost wonder if being underdogs would be helpful here. But I don't know. I think we were gonna do a Super Bowl preview a little bit later down the line, so I'll hold my thoughts and I'll have some time to reflect on what this matchup actually will entail. But I mean, I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be close, but it is the worst Super Bowl matchup I could have possibly dreamed of. So that's fun.
No, this is exactly what I don't think anybody wanted. Other than, I guess, well, even you could make the argument. I mean, the only happy people you got to think are 49ers fans, right? Because they don't have to take on the Ravens. Like, I feel like that's the one upside here, where it's just like you're avoiding the Ravens. I think after watching them lose that game, you got to think everybody in that 49ers locker room just like went, oh, thank God. Like, you almost dodged a bullet a little bit, right? Where it's just, I don't know. That's my opinion on it. I don't think you said you think it'll be close. I hope you're right. I feel like there's a good chance it won't be. I think that there's if I looking at the two teams, I mean Patrick Mahomes is going to Patrick Mahomes obviously, but if he gets stalled or if he can't get going or something happens, it's going to be ugly.
I do think this Chiefs defense is fantastic though, because I think for
Do you think it's better than the Ravens
as
defense?
good. Yes,
Oh, okay.
and I think I wouldn't have said that before, but after this game, because the Chiefs' offense, while good in this game, wasn't what won them the game. It's that they held Lamar Jackson to 7 points, basically, for most of the game. Um, and they played spectacularly, and I do think, as good as this Niners team is, they've now almost probably should have been eliminated in the playoffs twice in a row. They probably should have lost the game to Green Bay. They probably should have lost the game to Detroit. And it does, to give credit to the Niners, which makes me want to, like, I don't know, slam my head against the table. But to give credit to the Niners, this kind of shows that they've been in the playoffs before. Like, these situations don't
No,
happen.
they're an experienced team.
and
I think it should speak to how incredible Brock Purdy has been. I think people have been talking the whole conversation all day. When I look anywhere, has been Patrick Mahomes. I think people have to start talking about what Purdy's been able to do in his 2 years in the NFL because it's been. I think that story is almost more impressive to me at this point. Just what he's accomplished. It's an incredible feat. The fact that he went from undrafted, won the starting job because of injuries, went all the way to the championship, got hurt, got to the same spot next year, and then won it. Like that's insane.
Yeah, it is very impressive, and I think it's probably a good indicator of how impressive it is that I'm really starting to hate the little prick. As a Seahawks fan, I want to see him get his head smoked clean off.
I was gonna say I actually like him.
I hate him now.
I know that's
mind
heresy,
before.
but like he seems like a very likable dude.
I know. I didn't mind him. I thought
didn't mind him until he was good.
I didn't mind him because I thought the story was good, and that sentiment kind of lasted. And now I'm just at the point where I'm like, okay, it's enough. He needs to retire. He needs to get forcibly retired by somebody. I'm pissed.
Has it been 20
my
years
salty
yet?
Seahawks fan is coming out. This season has gone like they're just in key moments. As a Seahawks fan, I'm just getting.
This definitely has been a rough
around.
season to be a Seahawks fan. That's for sure.
Oh,
it has not been a good one.
Man, take me back to like week 2 when we beat the Lions in overtime. I think that's when my excitement for this team peaked, and it's been all crashing downhill from there.
Yeah,
Pete Carroll is gone. The Niners are in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Russell Wilson is gone.
Do you? I guess my follow-up question here would probably be to end things off. You mentioned earlier on you mentioned it like Ben Johnson and I'm forgetting the name of the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. Those are two guys who are potentially
Mike McDonald.
Yeah. Those are two people who have been linked to the Seahawks coaching job, right? After what you saw today, do you still want them to coach for the Seahawks, or do you want to go with what people are probably calling the safer pick in Dan Quinn?
Oh, okay, well, I don't want Dan Quinn. I think if they hire Dan Quinn, then we're in for a couple of years of tanking, honestly. Well, maybe not that bad. But, I mean, if I look at the recent performances, because it's like, at least Ben Johnson had a fantastic first half that he called.
He had
I was looking at
fantastic 95% of the season.
He did, and I was looking at tweets from the first half, and it was like, yeah, just give Ben Johnson a blank check, basically. And I think there were a couple of questionable calls. Again, the run on 3rd and goal being the number one play that I'm questioning. But he still is a fantastic offensive coordinator, and I would still greatly prefer him over Dan Quinn. Because if you look at, let's just compare them. Let's look at Dan Quinn's last game. Dan Quinn's last game was getting lit up for 50 points by Jordan Love and the Packers. So I'd rather take Ben Johnson kind of having a couple situational fuck-ups over the complete terrible showing that was Dan Quinn's defense. And for Mike McDonald, I think it's even more so, like, you can't really blame him because again, it was a rough first half, but they did clamp down on that Chiefs offense in the second half and held them scoreless. So I'm looking at that and I'm still thinking, okay, this is great. I still want him, and it's still the most. I think the biggest thing that you want from whoever is the next Seahawks head coach is, can they stop offenses like the Shanahan offense and like the McVay offense? Because for as great of a coach as Pete Carroll was, I think one of the biggest calling cards of the last 5 years was that he cannot beat the Rams, especially, and post Russell Wilson, he cannot beat the Niners. And that matters a lot more than anything, I think. Because if you can't beat those two teams, then you're not going to win anything. You're not going to win anything. We went 0-4 against the Niners and the Rams this year. I think that, as much as anything, is a big reason why Pete Carroll isn't here. Because if you win even one of those games, you're in the playoffs, and we're talking a completely different situation. But going 0-4 against your two biggest rivals is a big thing. And I think the success that Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald have had against both of those teams is pretty indicative, especially the Baltimore defense showing on Christmas Day. I think if anything gets Mike McDonald, if McDonald's walking up to interview for the Seahawks head coaching job, he can just put on the film from that game and be like, this is what I can do to Kyle Shanahan, hire me. And honestly, I think they should.
And I was going to say as well, I've been kind of scanning through Twitter in the last little bit, seeing if there's like a consensus pick. Because as a rather casual Seahawks fan at this point, I haven't been following it too much on if there's a favorite in one direction or the other. And for the most part, I'm seeing a lot of Mike McDonald. I think is the main consensus one, and I don't disagree with that one either. I don't hate the idea of going with a more defensive coach. I think that would I think that kind of sticks with what we've had for the last couple of years, as well as I'd still argue that Pete Carroll, although no, his defense was pretty ass at one point, but you know what I mean. I don't hate the idea of having
at one point being for the last 5 or 6 years.
Whatever.
That's why, again, that's a big reason he got fired. It's because he's a defensive coach and his defense isn't good. Yeah. So I think both sides of the ball need improvement in Seattle, but I think the defense was worse and was the main reason. I think you're going to need to bring in a new offensive coordinator. Yeah. That all looks
like general reaction. Those two memes pretty much define it pretty well, I think.
The other thing is that I do think Ben Johnson is, because the Seahawks are one of 2 head coach openings left, which I think once every coach is hired, we'll probably have a segment on all of the hires, so we can hold back on that. But I do think Ben Johnson is pretty in line to be the Commanders head coach, and after they just lost, I would not be shocked if that gets announced pretty soon, because from everything that I've been hearing, it sounds like it's almost a done deal. So Mike McDonald is definitely the big thing for me. There is a little bit of a worry because I don't think they've actually even technically interviewed him yet, just because with the timing around everything, they weren't able to. Yeah. Other teams were able to get him in, but because the Seahawks let go of Pete Carroll later, they weren't able to get him in on time, I think, was the essential situation. But if they can bring him in, get an interview in, hopefully everything checks out, I think he should be the pick. Because otherwise, the choices after that are kind of slim. So,
I just think for some reason I kept hearing that people wanted Dan Quinn, and I felt like I was the one odd person out because I'm not a fan of that pick for a lot of pretty obvious reasons. But now going through it, I think it's kind of swapped, which is I'm happy to see because that's where I'd go as well. I think I don't think it would be smart to. Bring in the guy who, honestly, despite having a fairly good defense with the Cowboys, I don't know. I've never really thought he was anything too incredible as a head coach. I don't know. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And I do think to your point, the Dan Quinn hasn't exactly when he was in Seattle, it's not like he was the one who built the Legion of Boom. That was a Pete Carroll thing. And I think if you want to get away from Pete Carroll football, which they did because they fired Pete Carroll, why would you hire his former defensive coordinator? That doesn't make sense to me, because that feels like a very lateral move in terms of going from Pete Carroll to a Pete Carroll disciple. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think.
Pelly. Oh.
Like,
Might have to sit out next season if they do that.
But yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think we can start to wrap this up. I just wanted to, because I think that was the final storyline that I think that was worth hitting on. There is the coaching carousel. The two teams who had coaches who there are a lot of interest for, I think, are that both went out, and now I think that that'll definitely add to a lot of the storylines going into the Super Bowl here. Because from what I'm hearing, it sounds like at least I imagine the Seahawks are going to want to have someone signed before the Super Bowl. So I wouldn't be shocked if we'll be talking about this rather soon.
Yeah. And they should be, especially now that they're both out. Because what's the holdup now? The holdup before was that they're in the playoffs, and neither of them are anymore. So.
Yep. No, I think
see those pretty soon. I wouldn't be shocked
if the Seahawks aren't knocking on Mike McDonald and Ben Johnson's doors tonight, then something's wrong.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Oh, everything's wrong though. It's a Chiefs-Niners Super Bowl.
The whole world's on fire.
Let's talk about another fucking sport. I hate football.
Yeah, it might be a good idea.
All right, we will now move into the NBA. And the NBA's got surprisingly a lot of news today. One of the biggest headlines from the past couple of days was on Friday, the performance we saw from Luka Doncic, who scored 73 points, tied for the fourth most in NBA history, against, funnily enough, the team that I believe originally drafted him before trading him right away.
For like a total of 10 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, and then traded him for Trae Young. Which is a fun little bit of irony. But obviously, fantastic performance by Luka, and it's come amidst a string of great performances. We saw Embiid drop 70 earlier. Saw Karl Anthony Towns drop 62. I believe Booker had a 60-point night as well. Lots of high-scoring performances. But Simon, do you think this one is extra special?
Yeah, I was gonna say I think the biggest conversation that I've seen is this is the first single game performance we've seen that people are actually comparing as to whether it's more impressive than Kobe's 81. Because I think a lot of the things that I've heard in the last decade of me following basketball is, sure, Wilt scored 100 back when he was playing Plumbers, but Kobe managing to score 81 in arguably one of the toughest, what would be the word? Eras of basketball, I guess. Doing that was just ridiculous. And now Doncic has come and scored 73. Sure, not as much. But when you look at the rest of his... I'm surprised people are talking about he almost had a 73-point triple-double. Holy shit. How does that happen? I know people talk about how insanely good of a basketball player Doncic is, but I don't think you can... It's just ridiculous. I don't think I've ever seen a stat line as crazy as that. As even just looking back at Wilt never was able to get that many assists. Even just looking back, Kobe on his, I think Kobe only had 1 assist in his 81-point game. He had 2. It's bonkers that you can go out there and score at such an efficient rate that you can get up to 73 and still get enough assists to almost not quite hit your average on the season, but get close enough that, I mean, he has to be one of the best players we've ever seen at this point, talent-wise. It is bonkers how good he is. And you wouldn't know it from looking at him, but, whenever he pulls off stuff like this, it just makes my jaw drop. And I want to make it clear, I am absolutely a Kobe fan. If I were to pan up, I've got a Kobe poster on my wall. I was growing up, I watched Kobe. When I played basketball as a kid, I would model my game after him. And hearing about this, it makes my jaw drop. It is ridiculous. I think the fact that I feel like people are already starting to move on from how bonkers of a game this was, but I don't think that should be the case. I think this should be something that people are talking about for a long time. Because I didn't personally get to watch it. I heard about it afterwards, but I wish I did. I think I have to go back and watch that game because it must have been something to behold.
Yeah. And I think it was even more, I don't have it right in front of me, but I was hearing that it was even more impressive in the first half. He was on pace to I think he scored like 42 in the first half. I think he might have been even on pace to
Jesus.
beat Kobe,
Which is insane.
which is just insane.
Yeah.
Um,
Because I think,
and I mean, imagine how good that must feel for Luka to do that
yeah.
against the Hawks after being traded away. And I mean, that is one of the more interesting trades I think in NBA history, because it's not like Trae Young has been a bad player either,
No.
but it's just
He's not been Luka
it's no
Doncic.
Luka.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one thing that is crazy to me is the conversation around Kobe's 81 that everybody loves to bring up and always likes to poke holes in is the fact that it took him 46 shots. Which this was the era of Lakers basketball where Kobe was shooting 75% of the shots that the Lakers would take all night long, right? Like, so he almost had 50 shots. Doncic did all of that in 33.
Wow.
Let that sink in for a second. If he wasn't passing the ball, like if he didn't get 7 assists, he would have broke 81. No doubt in my mind.
Oh yeah.
Like 8 for 13 from 3. He had to play the full 45. Kobe did not play 45. But it's still bonkers. It is the most ridiculous stat line I think I have ever seen since looking up Wilt stuff, right? Where you'll see a game where Wilt went like 72 and 26, right? Like this has to be up there with like some of the stupidest stat lines we've ever seen. And it shouldn't be like I don't even know. I know I'm just going around in circles almost, but it's just like I don't even know what else to say really. It's bonkers that we're seeing something like this in the modern game of basketball where defense takes so much more skill and so many of these elite scorers have to take these less efficient shots from outside the three-point line that are tougher. Like Doncic had to shoot 8 for 13 from 3, 25 for 33. What the fuck? And honestly, this makes me more confident that somebody in the next probably 10 years is going to break 81. I think it's going to happen. Like there was a long time where a lot of people, despite how I'm going to throw up the air quotes here, inefficient Kobe's 81-point game was, because that's always been the thing that people like to poke holes in. It's still I don't even know. And this is not me taking away from it at all. It's just showing how talented some of these players in the league have gotten to the point where they can hit 73 and almost make it look easy. Like it's crazy.
And I mean, in terms of thinking of someone potentially breaking it in the next 10 years, I mean, even in the past 4 or 5 days, we've gotten 4 what was it? 4 60+ point performances.
We nearly talked about Embiid breaking 70 last week.
Yeah, and I think it's even a bigger story because I mean, obviously Luka is the headliner.
Yeah.
But the others, his 3 performances are huge too, and I do want to get into something that I thought was interesting, just to hear your perspective on this, Simon, because you're more of a basketball guy than I am. But I heard in the Karl Anthony Towns got 62, I believe, but they lost.
Yeah.
And I know the coach after the game was just saying that it was just a complete travesty that he got that many points, because basically his criticism was that they were focused more on that than winning the game.
Yeah.
What do you think in terms of that balance?
I do agree with that, because I think at this point there are some players who will just try and get as high of a score as possible. I think that is what makes the Luka's game as impressive as it was. Because, I mean, I keep saying it, but 7 assists. Like, are you kidding? How did you have time to pass out 7 assists? And I think, like, I don't think you can even have that conversation with Luka's game, at least in my opinion. I think that's, I'm trying to find Karl Anthony Towns' stat line from that 62-point game quickly. Give me a second. I'll find it so that we can see exactly what he had. But
to your point, I think where I'm at, like when I initially saw that quote, I was frankly kind of pissed at the coach, thinking like, this guy went all out there and got 62 points for your team, and you're blaming your team's effort. But putting that in perspective in terms of,
it's not even like he took that many shots. I'd agree with it if he wasn't shooting efficiently, but like if he did it on 60% field goal, or like from the shooting from the field, if he's shooting efficiently, why wouldn't he take it? I think
Yeah.
like why wouldn't you it's feeding the hot hand. It's smart. It's smart basketball. You keep giving the ball to the guy who's going to score. And he went. You can't even make the argument that they lost because they weren't shooting threes because they were feeding a center. Because Karl Anthony Towns went 10 for 15 from the 3-point line. Like it's just looking at it, I don't agree on the fact that he was the reason they lost because that's not the case at all. I agree with the principle because that does happen where players will stat pad, but I don't think that's the case necessarily here because especially not in Luka's. But I mean, Cat only had 2 assists, but if you're scoring that much, why would you not ask for the ball? If you're not missing, keep shooting, right? Like it's not necessarily like it's not a hard equation on that one.
And that's the kind of thing, like as a coach, like what do you want your messaging to be? Because I think the hard. I mean, I'm sure if he scored 62 and they won, this wouldn't be a conversation. But I do think it's the kind of thing where it's like you don't really want to praise your team for effort in a loss. Like there are no moral victories. So I do get that angle of it, but it is. I mean, it just sucks for Karl Anthony Towns to have that kind of performance and just have it be wasted, and have the coach kind of lambasting everybody because of your performance. Like it's kind of not a. I understand it's kind of a between a rock and a hard place for the coach, but I am kind of like, well, what more can the guy do?
Yeah. I'm kind of scrolling through Twitter and I think I found a quote. I'm going to make sure that I'm not taking this out of context quickly because I can't believe that somebody would actually say this. But wow, no, it doesn't look like it's out of context. Stephen A. Smith, the legend himself, after the Doncic 73-point game, I didn't hear about this before. He came out and basically said that it was what was his exact words? He called it disgraceful. And
The Karl Anthony Towns thing.
no, the Doncic. Doncic scoring 73.
Doncic.
Yeah. I'm trying to understand his take here. I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
I think I have the quote here from the Timberwolves coach, and I think this kind of encapsulates it and kind of adds to that. So he said, he's talking about how bad the defense was, and said is immature basketball. And then he said, this is his quote. I mean, there are lots of times when just because you've scored 2 or 3 or 4 points in a row or baskets in a row, obviously we're going to try to feed a hot hand, look for a hot hand, but at some point we've got to get back to making the right play and doing the right things. There are lots of ways to be immature, and there were lots of immature performances throughout the roster. We totally disrespected the game ourselves, got exactly what we deserved. And he also added that he was asked whether he felt Karl Anthony Towns was, like that whole conversation we just had, whether he was just hunting for stats or trying to win the game. And he immediately said, like, absolutely, I think he was trying to hunt stats. So he said, quote, like, for a while he was going, but down the stretch that kind of dried up for us.
Yeah. And I mean,
I think that's, ooh.
Yeah. I mean, it's potentially stat hunting, but like, or stat padding, whatever you want to call it. But it's just like, you lost by 3 points. Why are you blaming the guy who scored 70?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know if there's much logic in that one. I don't agree with that. I think this take from Stephen A.
It doesn't seem like
it's just like, what's the point in bullying the defense of the Hawks? Yeah, obviously the team that got 73 points dropped on them didn't play great defense. Like, wow, shocker. But it's just you're piling on, like, instead of appreciating the greatness of something like this happening, you're crapping on the entire thing, or you're basically discrediting Luka because apparently the Hawks don't know how to play defense. It's weird to me. It's a weird take. Is kind of why I wanted to bring it in here, because after reading it, I just went, why? What's the point? Like,
yeah. It is a weird take, and I think something you said there really resonates. Is like, if your team lost, why are you blaming the guy who scored 62?
Yeah.
The guy
like,
who scored.
Why
70?
are you paying him the big bucks if you don't want him to score that much?
Yeah, I get it. I get wanting to have set plays, and I get wanting to distribute the ball or whatever, and trying to play winning basketball instead of that. But if you're like if you said, if you're shooting efficiently and you're scoring that many points, it's not really the fault of the team in that point. Blame the defense, sure, blame other people for not carrying their weight, but putting it all on and saying like, oh, this isn't how the game should be played by scoring that many points. It's like, come on, get off your high horse, really.
Yeah, and this is just a wild stat as well. Players in NBA history who have scored at least 73 points in a game with less than 18 free throw attempts. It is one name and one name only, and that is Luka Doncic. I mean, what else needs to be said, right? It's just bonkers. I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna keep repeating that, and I mean, I think it's really cool that we saw both him hit 73. We haven't even mentioned it yet, but Devin Booker also hit 62. Like, and both on the anniversary of Kobe's death, and it's just like a cool little like thing to kind of pay homage, I guess, to a legend. And I mean, I don't know if that maybe that had something to do with it, maybe it didn't, but I think it's still just a pretty cool thing that it all happened. So I think it's pretty dumb that people are getting mad at this entire thing, because I think it is. There's a reason we don't talk a lot about basketball, but there's a reason we're talking about it, right? Like it's a very, very cool thing that happened, and knocking it down just because, God, I'm gonna think that's a terrible take. Like, the one fun fact about broadcasting or commentating or anything of the such, the one lesson that I've constantly learned, even if your team is losing terribly and somebody on the away team, like let's say you're hired by a specific team and the away team, you still should give credit to an away player, because like there's, I don't know, this stuff pisses me off because it just doesn't.
This is why I couldn't broadcast for the Seahawks.
Yeah,
because
exactly, right? Like,
I'd be calling for
I mean,
Brock Purdy's head to get knocked off.
It's so pointless. Like, give credit where credit's due. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
It just pisses me off. I don't know if I can put it into better words than I've tried to.
And I mean, it is a very Stephen A. Smith take, because I was going to say it's not like Stephen A. Smith has any like horse in this race. He's not a Mavs fan, I don't think. Probably not in terms of how much he hates the Cowboys.
Oh, is he a Knicks fan? Is that what he is? What team does he cheer for?
I think he might be.
What isn't I was about to say I think he's a Cowboys fan actually.
No, he's not. He's famous for hating the Cowboys. Skip
I know,
Bayless
but I
is
think
a Cowboys fan.
I know. Favorite teams. Is it the Knicks? He seems like he'd be a Knicks fan. He is a fan of the Giants, Green Bay Packers. Oh, these are NFL teams. Does he have a favorite team? Knicks, Steelers, and Cowboys.
There you go.
And Yankees. So like all the teams.
He does not like the Cowboys.
Sometimes.
He does not like the Cowboys. He does not like the Cowboys.
I don't pay attention. I don't actually care.
Yeah. Point being, that I mean, Stephen A. Smith, like he's going to do that because that's his whole thing. Is he's going to say outlandish things to get attention. That's kind of his whole gimmick.
Yeah. So. And I get that. I get that too, because I mean, I've lived in that world at this point. I can say that there are definitely people who will do that, but like it's so, you're not even saying, it's not outlandish, it's just stupid. Like there's a line, and that's a stupid. It's just like, I'm not going to get in an argument with you or like repost you because you said that. I'm just gonna look at it, shake my head, and go, what a fucking idiot. Like,
yeah.
Like, I don't know. That's a weird take to me. So I don't know. That's the only reason I'd get mad at it. Appreciate greatness. It doesn't come around that often. So, in the NBA side of things, we've got one of the more shocking coaching changes I think I've seen in a while, because it felt like we weren't getting anything out of Milwaukee, at least prior to this. I was not hearing anything that this could be coming. And then out of nowhere, Adrian Griffin is out despite the Bucks being second in the East. And all of a sudden, they're hiring one of the most legendary coaches of the last 20 years in Doc Rivers, who has won a championship with the Celtics as far back as Ooh, testing my NBA knowledge. 2008, 7, I think. One of those years. So they're obviously bringing in someone with a lot of championship experience, somebody who is very capable of leading a team like this. But this entire thing has been very interesting to follow, at least for me as somebody who generally is a bit of a warm weather NBA fan where I'll tune in when something interesting happens. And something interesting has definitely happened here. So I don't know what your opinion on it is, Caleb. I don't know how much research you've gotten to be able to do into this one, but it's just looking at it at face value, it is pretty wild.
It is, and I mean, no, I'm not the most, but I'm looking at it just from again, from a very casual fan perspective, and being like, whoa, this is kind of, I, their record is insane, and it's just something that I feel like can't really, and hasn't happened in any other sport where the team like is winning that much and it's a mid-season firing. Like I can see it if a team wins that much, but they've had the same coach for a while and then they don't perform in the playoffs, so then you fire them, like a potential like Seahawks situation, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like they're have a winning record, but the sustained success hasn't been there. But this is a first-year head coach, and he led them to the second place in the conference. But I do think it's almost like that does still feel a little bit like underachieving, which is kind of crazy to say. But
I don't know about that. I mean, the headline that CBS is using is why the Bucks fired a coach who won 70% of his games. Like, what else could
but
he
it
have
is
done?
still like when you brought in Lillard, like I guess you could have wanted more. I think I saw this comparison online, and this made a lot of sense to my football fan brain.
Yeah.
They're saying like firing Adrian Griffin would be like if the Eagles had fired Nick Sirianni, and
Yeah.
it's like, which makes sense because it's like there's a team where there's like signs of potential decline, and you're just trying to get ahead of the eight ball. I guess is the potential reasoning behind it. I wonder if that is what it is, or if it's just like they had the idea that they wanted Doc Rivers and we're like, okay, we're doing this now.
Yeah, and not to immediately shoot that in the foot, but even like they're 7-3 in the last 10. Like it's not like they were on a losing skid or anything like that. It just kind of happened. And now since then we've had a little bit more reason behind it, as there was maybe it was more locker room related is what we're kind of hearing now. But even looking at it, they're only 3 games back of first in the East. They're behind the Celtics, who are a very good team, 35-11, and they're 3 games in front of the 76ers, another very good team. And the East is very close this year. It's pretty competitive. So I'm not shocked that I wouldn't have been shocked if you were right, actually, in the fact that what if they were just trying to get ahead of it, but I don't know what they were trying to necessarily get ahead of, other than the locker room issues that we're about to get into. More related to a coach that got let go in Terry Stotts is his name, who was one of the assistant coaches who was brought in, I believe, around the same time, actually, that Adrian Griffin was brought in to help coach. I think that Stotts had a connection with Damian Lillard, is what I was hearing beforehand. And I think that it was... This whole story is pretty wild. This is from The Athletic. I'll just read it out. And then Caleb, I'll let you give your opinion on it. But Griffin had asked the coaches to meet by themselves while the players did an individual shooting. Stotts began to speak with both Giannis and Dame before he got walking over. So basically, just picture it in your head, there's 2 groups, the 2 cliques, right? And Dame, Giannis, Stotts are over in this corner. The coaches are yelling at Stotts to get over there. And then when he asked for more time with the stars, Griffin yelled at him in front of the entire team. Just like let it out on this assistant coach, who was pretty much, to my knowledge, from what I remember from the hiring, I thought he was brought in almost specifically to be somebody who's going to have a good relationship with your stars, that being Dame and Giannis, and just ripping them to shreds. I mean, it's just kind of wild. And apparently before this incident had even happened, both Stotts and Griffin had a tenuous relationship, is what I'm reading, but that was the final straw, and that's why Stotts ended up leaving. So, I mean, it's... Oh, that all happened less than 2 weeks before opening night. Oh, okay. So that makes things a little bit more different, actually. Because I didn't realize that it happened that far back.
Hmm.
Yeah, I honestly thought that was more recent, so that's my bad. But even then, like it's
You
still
almost
it.
you almost wonder if that was a sign of things to come. Then.
Yeah, well, I'd almost argue it's a window into what was probably going on in the locker room, where it's
That's a
just
good way to put it. Yeah.
somebody who very clearly did not want to share power, and was not
Yeah.
afraid to let people know about it. I mean,
Which is so weird as a first year head coach.
yeah,
I mean, like
like
to be that.
what is Adrian Griffin's like previous accomplishments like in the
Yeah.
NBA?
What's his resume looking like?
Yeah, well, I'm just
Because
kind
I
of
had never
curious because
I
like that is very like you. I have been in the league for 10 years. You are going to sit down and do your job. Like that is if I heard that like Popovich had done something like that, or even Doc Rivers, funnily enough, I would have been like, I mean, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm trying to find. So he was a coach. He was the only job he's had previously, from what I was reading, and this does make sense when you think about what Toronto did during his time there. But he was the an assistant coach from 2018 to 2023. 2020 is it 2023 or 2022? Doesn't really matter, but you get the idea.
hmm
Yeah, like I mean, yeah, it's a pretty wild thing to have happen where you'll always hear about coaches ripping into players, and that's almost pretty normal in most sports. But ripping into a coach is pretty not a good sign. I mean, the last
Yeah.
example I can think of immediately off the top of my head, Josh McDaniels, right? Like it's just it
Yeah.
immediately just takes me back to that, and that's never a good thing.
Yeah. It's not. And I mean, for all of the debate you can have about like what could he have done better, I mean that's probably the biggest thing. And if I'm looking at it from the Bucks side, I'm like, well, I think they are probably a better team with Doc Rivers as the coach. Um, I do think that is that's an upgrade, and I don't think
No, I
you
don't
can question
disagree.
that.
I think the entire thing
Um,
is a very odd situation. I think it's more that because yeah, obviously I'm not gonna sit here and try and convince you that Adrian Griffin is a better head coach than Doc Rivers. That'd be stupid. Like
yeah,
Doc
yeah,
Rivers is who he is for a reason. He is a very good and very prestigious head coach, and very clearly he sees something in this Bucks team that he thinks he's going to be able to use to turn them into the juggernaut they've both been in the past and will probably be in the future. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what to really add past that. It's like obviously you're getting an upgrade, but was it an upgrade you needed with how good the team was doing, or it's one of those things, right? Where I think this is just a way of seeing how exactly how bad Adrian Griffin must have been in that locker room.
yeah. Because I'm coming over more to what you were saying in terms of like there has to be something else. Because
Yeah,
if I'm looking at this whole situation, because another big thing is like it's maybe not as much as like in football, if you hire a coach you have to completely revamp the system, um, and
basketball is
that
not
transition is hard.
quite the same.
It's not
Yeah.
quite the same, but it's still a revamp in terms of what
Yep.
you want to do. It's still a
I
complete culture change
I would
in terms of
argue,
everything,
yeah,
really.
I would argue it's more culture. It's very similar to hockey in that fact, where I'd argue that, sure, in hockey you could talk about, oh, it's a different power play system and there's a different penalty kill system and all that, right? But most coaches know how to coach that system. Like, you can drop basically any NHL head coach into any other NHL head coach's system, like if somebody got fired, and they'd probably be able to finish the season doing that, right? If that makes sense. I'd argue it's very similar with the NBA, and in the NBA, it's almost less scripted. I'd argue there's a lot of set plays, but a lot of those are already ran through the stars, and most of those stars would have had those set plays. It's almost like those set plays follow around the stars more than they do the coaches. Is how I describe it. Where like you
Right.
obviously like hear about like the Kobe ISO, right, or Michael Jordan's ISO. Like everybody had like all of these stars have specific plays that'll like or signals or something that follow them their entire career, and that's not necessarily something you see in other sports other than maybe like football, like what's it like quarterbacks, like what like audibles, whatever the hell they're called. I'm trying to remember.
No, but that would still be very specific to the coach in terms of what those audibles actually mean for the
I
play.
guess.
But kind of to move back into a little bit of what we were saying before, not to switch it too much, but I do think this is important in terms of what Giannis was saying about it, where he was talking about the firing, and he was talking about the kind of narrative around it, and was saying, quoted as saying, out there, people are creating a narrative that's not accurate, but I'm a person who really tries to not fall into it. I refuse to fall into the bubble of, oh, this is accurate, or oh, this is not accurate, because there's always going to be something about there about me, about the team. Like, oh, he didn't have a good relationship with Griff. False. I love the guy. I invited him to my wedding, you know. I talked with him. I was coached by him, and we did very, very well.
Yeah, and I think
Which I think that's interesting.
yeah, no, I don't disagree. I don't know. This entire thing is very, very odd. I'm kind of trying to find other people's reactions to get the general public. Obviously, both me and you are not the biggest NBA fans, so I don't know if we can necessarily speak to what the consensus is. So I've been more this episode. I've been enjoying occasionally jumping on Twitter to see what people are thinking. I think this one pretty much is pretty well. One second, I'm gonna frame this up because I wanna show this one. This one deserves attention. But yeah. Maybe that's how some fans are looking at it. Doc Rivers definitely has not he hasn't had a lot of success in recent times, so I could definitely see that argument. But just
because I mean the big thing is he's had hurdles in the playoffs, right?
That too.
Has been the
like he hasn't been able to really win since coaching that Boston Celtics team, and even then, with how much talent that team had, do you really want to put it all on Doc Rivers' success? And he's how good this Bucks team is,
talent that didn't go.
Yeah. Well, the Clippers is the first one that comes to mind for most people. I mean, 76ers as well, but
I was going to say 76ers was the one that came to mind for me.
Well, because the Clippers, that Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, like Chris Paul team, like that team is arguably maybe equal to this, I'd argue. Like just like I mean, I'm a casual. How good is Dame these days anyway, I guess, but like looking at it talent-wise, it seems very similar to this, or if not worse. So I'm curious. I'm curious how this is going to end up.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I like this Bucks team a lot. I personally I would be a big fan of them doing well, but I mean, who knows at this point, right? Like it's going to be interesting for sure.
I honestly just wish like for this, to sum up this whole thing, it sucks that we can't have more of a conversation about it, but honestly my conclusion that I'm coming to by just talking through this is just like we don't know because we weren't in like the front office. Like we weren't in the locker room. It's like it's such a decision that came out of left field that there has to be something. And I think it is important to highlight that Giannis is coming out there and saying like you don't know, because he's right, we don't. And it's hard not. It is hard not to speculate.
Yeah, like
it's hard not to when you literally don't have any other reason. When the guy was winning 70% of his games, there has to be something else. So you have to be speculating. It's not like I know the Wizards fired their coach this week too, but there's a reason we're not talking about that. It's not like that's surprising.
Yeah. That's not a shocker. After all, their best player is Kyle Kuzma, and as a Lakers fan, I can speak to that not being incredible. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot more to add. I don't think. I think I've kind of said my piece on this one. But I don't hate Doc Rivers as a coach. I actually like him a lot as a coach. I think he's very good at elevating players. I think you always hear stories come out after he leaves generally about players usually liking him with a couple few rare circumstances. But I mean, that's going to happen with every coach when you've been in the league as long as he has. I mean, he's just one of those coaches that I don't think you're sure people are going to be like, yeah, you're hiring an old head. Like, is it going to work? We'll see. I'm not mad at it. If I were a Bucks fan, I wouldn't be mad at it either. I think that's a fairly good pickup.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week. A bit of a lighter one this week. We will be back with more, though. We'll do some Super Bowl preview. We'll do all that kind of fun stuff. So Stay in the loop, subscribe, find us on Fresh Take Network. Boom, in a different spot this time. So
It's wild.
it's this way.
It's not.
God damn it.
I know. I switched it up
God
on
damn
you.
it. There.
I switched it up on you.
There. I'm too used to going the other way. Now it's oh. There we go. That's like, I got to train my brain to do that now. Fresh Take Network. You can find us there if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any sort of audio platform. Otherwise, find us here on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Go follow us there. Anyways, for my shout out for the week, this is something I randomly found, and this helped me get out of my depression after watching the Niners go to another Super Bowl. Is seeing, I don't know what context this has. I don't know if this was done on purpose. I don't know if this was just because in my head, I think we have the clip, so we can.
We do.
Why don't we run this clip?
Yeah, we can run it.
So I don't.
Here, I don't think it's. Oh, now it's in frame.
There we go. So this is the Spurs mascot catching a live bat in the Spurs game against the Timberwolves today.
And for a bit of context as well, Manu Ginobili, who during his playing career literally like volleyball spiked a bat that flew in the arena, was in the crowd, and the whole time, I'm not going to play the audio because I feel like we'd get in trouble. I threw a credit up there just in case. I think we would get in trouble if we played the audio. But the announcers the whole time were like trying to go, "Come on, Manu, get out there, we need you." Oh, there we go, he got him.
He got him, and I think that's incredible for a couple reasons. I love that they're coming in like, "Oh yeah, you get him." Look at Wemby coming in. I for one think that's fantastic for a couple reasons. I think it's fantastic because he's already dressed up in a Batman costume.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Was this planned? Like, did they have a live bat that they were going to release, and then they just had him come out there to try and catch it? Like,
I really don't have an answer for you on that one, but I do think it is absolutely incredible that it happened. I'll keep that on the screen.
Yeah,
it's a fun little.
It's a fantastic image, and yeah. I think a couple things. I think if this was a planned like stunt, I think it's fantastic, and they should do more stuff like this. I think if this was a coincidence that the mascot was wearing a Batman costume at the same time and had a net on hand at the same time a bat flew into the arena.
Yeah.
There's no way. But either way, it's fantastic, and I love it.
If we want to go down the rabbit hole of, 1 second. Of funny things that are very clearly set up. I'm sure you've seen this. Oh, right. I forgot that there's an actual gritty dance now, so it's harder to find. It's harder to find this clip. Where? Oh, come on. There's no way. I want to find it because this is so funny. I don't know if I will. That's really sad. Anyway, gritty. There was like they planted like a fake proposal in the crowd. And then Gritty just walked up behind with a sign that just said "Mine's bigger," and then the girl jumps in his arms and he runs off. It's gonna show that as well.
Yeah,
that's not my shout out. My shout out is something absolutely incredible. If you are somebody who tunes into the visual or the more video side of the podcast often, you will know that I'm usually not too far away from one of these bad boys. Usually this is an empty can. I don't know if I think I drank this earlier today. I don't think this was a rare podcast where I didn't drink them, but I buy them in packs at the Sobeys that I live by for like $9 for a pack of 6 because apparently I think that I have that kind of money and then I spend it and then I cry. But anyway, my girlfriend went to Costco with her mom for whatever reason. And
this is a Costco shout out.
Yeah, the Costco shout out. And they discovered this, and whenever the next time, because they have a Costco membership, I will be going with them to Costco because of the discovery of this incredible thing. That is a 24. Caleb, I want you to give me your best guess on how much this thing costs.
Well, it's Costco, so it's going to be cheap.
Yeah.
The 24 pack, it's 9 for 6.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it's about like, I'm gonna just double it and say 18 for 24.
It's not bad. It's 20. $20 for 24
Okay,
cans,
okay.
which is a really good deal.
That's still an amazing deal.
And
That's
the
still a
second
great
I found
deal.
out about that, I will be going to Costco after my next paycheck and spending and buying like 500 cans of San Pellegrino, and it'll be lovely.
They're
I will
pretty
never
cool.
be without another can of San Pellegrino for another podcast.
They're pretty good.
Costco cannot be healthy for anybody.
I feel no, it's not. It's funny. I feel like you have given a San Pellegrino shout out on the podcast like at
More
least
than
3
I've
or
done
4
anything
times.
else. Oh yeah, because they're
yeah.
so good. They're
I do think-
incredible.
They are controversial opinion. I've had because I didn't really have all that many, but my girlfriend had some over at her house, so I've had them a couple times more than I have in the last couple months. And
Okay,
they're
but what
okay.
flavor?
They're just okay.
But what flavor?
Like I think it's the same one that you have.
Really? Oh,
It's like the red
good
can.
one.
It's the red
Then again,
can.
you don't like iced
I'm
tea
like-
either, so you're just weird.
No, I don't like iced tea. I think it's
Yeah.
terrible. I like
Well,
this a
there you
lot better
go.
than I like iced tea. I think
Okay.
it's pretty. I think it's pretty good. I just don't know if it deserves the hype. I'd just rather get a Coke.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah, that's fair. I'll still buy the occasional classic Coke, but I mean, I don't know. I'll usually buy the Coke when I'm feeling cheap. These make me feel like how I imagine like a soccer mom who's 45 feels drinking a glass of wine before bed. That's how I feel when I drink a San
So that's the
Pellegrino.
vibe you want to go for.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the vibe you're aiming for.
It makes me feel like I have more money than I actually have, when in reality San Pellegrinos are the reason I don't have any money. And it is. So there's a little irony in that, but you know what? It's alright. I'm willing to live.
You're gonna get a San Pellegrino sponsorship.
Oh,
That's gonna be our
so
first
cool.
sponsorship with how many times we've had them out.
That'd be so awesome. San Pellegrino.
And I have to get
Then you have to
taken behind the barn and have my tape beaten out of me violently.
That'd be the
Pellegrino
ad.
marketing team.
The ad would just be me taking a shotgun to your head.
This is why you should buy
what
San
happens.
Pellegrino, or else
Yeah,
it's
this is
gonna
what
happen
happens.
to you.
Yeah. Or throwing you in the ocean to get the full roundabout. Like,
I mean, I'm gonna get thrown in the ocean anyways.
that's true.
Let's
That's
say
true.
I'm not gonna add any more, but let's say there is developments on that side.
Oh, really?
It's looking like it's definitely gonna happen. So we're
That's
waiting.
good to
The
hear.
weather has not been great in Vancouver
Yeah,
recently, but it's coming.
that's good.
It's
to hear.
coming.
I'm excited.
I was just waiting for our first like big video to pop off so that we can see have more people watch me get thrown in the ocean.
Yeah, that's true. I'm so disappointed.
Because that video
I will
that
say
video references it. That video references it.
that's
So
true.
now I have
you know what?
2,000 plus people who know that I
Yeah,
need to
that's
get
true.
thrown in the ocean.
It literally opens with it. That is the opening of that video.
Yep.
Is me laughing at you for bringing it up again.
Yep.
Oh yeah. I will say I am pissed that the All-Star Game video did not do as well, because that one I still think that's comedy gold. If anybody
Yeah,
who is
I
watching
think
this
it
who
was
has not
great.
watched that, it is art. And that video also references it, considering the arena we play in is called the Ocean.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. Oh, is that why you did that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
It was like, what can we name the arena that'll like be like a nice little like if you spot it type thing, right? And I was like, name it the Ocean. Maybe
Oh, I
just
didn't
maybe
even spot it.
some.
And I'm on this podcast. I'm
Yeah,
the one
you
who's
did- yeah,
supposed to be going in the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. What I should have done is I
Trick
should
Play
have made
fans
the ice
will know this
blue
stuff.
if I could do that. No, that would have been a good way.
It would have also looked terrible.
It would have been. Oh, it would have been the worst thing ever, but it would have been funny. Yeah, go watch that.
My orange
Anybody who's
jerseys
here.
would have stood out.
I still
Nice.
think I still stand
Yeah.
by what I said, that I think that's one of the best segments we've ever done. So I think that deserves more attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure to check
Go
that
watch
out.
it.
Check out everything, because we have things everywhere. Isn't that wild? Look up Trick Play everywhere. We're not the Spanish one, we're the English one, which you probably know by now. So just
If you've made it this far in the podcast, you should not be confused by that.
You can probably tell by now that both me and Caleb's Spanish-speaking abilities are not quite on par as the other
No
ones.
habla español.
Yeah, exactly. We also don't talk... I think they do college football, so there's not even any crossover, really. From what I you know what? It's been a while.
We talk college sometimes.
We occasionally talk college. We can give a shout-out to the other trick play, who we did not know existed before creating the podcast, but that's all right. I think there is such a difference.
The second best trick play podcast.
The second best, yeah. Which is still quite an honor, I will say. They have a lot more subscribers than we do. They're a lot cooler, apparently. But yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
You should just go ransack.
To be fair, they've existed for like 4 years, I think. Which is like the...
It's gonna be us in 4 years. That's the goal.
Big time. But yeah. Feel free to go check them out, because occasionally I think about it and I wonder if they've ever looked up their channel on YouTube and just go like, who are these assholes? So yeah, go check them out, because I think that's funny. But yeah, that's them.
It's in French. That's even worse.
Is it French? Oh, it does say French up there. That's new. Oh, you know what? I wonder.
There was one in Spanish.
Was there?
Is there both? I think
there's both.
You know what? I rescind my shout out. I'm not shouting out the Trick Play French podcast. I was under the impression I was shouting out the Trick Play Spanish podcast, and that's really upsetting.
Yeah, you know what's crazy to me? Like we can now say we've had guests on now, and we can say it was lovely to have people on the podcast, but it comes with its own difficulties having more people, like trying to fit everything in. The one thing I've noticed is they have like 7 people on their podcast, and that is you know what? Hats off to them. Is all I have to say, because that must be so hard to set up. Like I'm not saying that in any like ironic way at all. I'm like, holy smokes, that is good for you guys.
That is impressive. However, This is the competition.
That's true.
And we're going to beat their asses into the ground and get 8 people on the podcast next week. Tune in!
You won't even know who the 8 people are. We won't know who they are.
We don't even know who the 8 people are.
I'm just going to call random people, cold call them.
Okay.
They'll be on.
Dan Campbell's on the podcast next week where I verbally berate him for his choices. That's it. See you later. Tune in again.
We're gonna use whatever
Mic drop.
We're gonna use Omegle to like find random people online. And just like bring them on the podcast. You know what? That would be.
What do you think about Dan Campbell's decision?
That would be a funny thing to add to the end of some of these podcasts, actually. I will say, I think that would be hilarious. Just like doing a basic.
We're gonna end up like getting groomed on there, though. I don't know what that's.
That's true. Well, groomed. We're both adults, but I mean, I know what you mean. I don't know how much I want to see some dude doing wacky things with wacky body parts when we're just trying to find some person for the sake of comedy. Just go, hey, what? Just like super high energy as well. It's like, welcome to the Trick Play Podcast. They just like fall backwards in their chair. Like that's what I want. That would be some comedy. But yeah, no, we'd probably just find somebody, you know, just like whacking his willy, and then it wouldn't be as good of content. It'd be a different kind of content. Different kind that we do not aim for here on the Trick Play Podcast.
Yeah, that's the forbidden Trick Play porn podcast. There's a Trick Play sports podcast, Trick Play French podcast.
We're going to new grounds here. You're talking about jumping in the ocean. That feels like jumping across the ocean. We're like conquering. God, this podcast fucking sucks.
It's off the rails. Go watch something else.
Yeah, God. Go listen to Stephen A. Smith.
Oh.
Yeah, just go listen to him. I'm sure. Is there a French Stephen A. Smith? Continue.
There has to be.
French Stephen A. Smith. It's a memoriam. With that, we will be ending the podcast in a very, very nice and not very happy place, but that's okay. Trick Play Podcast. Tune in next week. Watch the All-Star thing because that took fucking forever to do. Yeah. Subscribe. Do it, coward.